Hi, this is Dr. Pola Rosen, publisher of Education Update, and I'm here today in the Bronx at the Bronx Charter School for Better Learning with none other than the founder, Dr. Ted Swartz. We are so privileged to be here with you today to share insights into ways of teaching that many of us are not aware of, even if we're veterans in the school system. So, may I call you Ted?
I hope you do.
Thank you. So Ted, tell us a little bit about, first of all, the technique that is used in the school, who it's named after, and the fascinating saga of how you first came upon this technique.
Okay. The person who first developed this approach is Dr. Caleb Gitenyo. And he named the approach the subordination of teaching to learning. I knew nothing about it. When I started teaching, I was a youngster, early 20s, and really struggling through the first couple of years, as you may be able to understand in those days, and maybe even these days. Having gone through coursework at college didn't necessarily prepare one for the realities of being with children, especially where I found myself, children who were in an inner city neighborhood and whose lives were not necessarily the easiest. It was a middle school, grades 5 through 8, and the school had been open only 2 or 3 years. The principal of the school was a wonderful fellow who was determined to try to make a difference in the lives of these children. He met me by accident. I heard that there was an opening in this school for someone to teach typing. Not that I was a great typist, but I was a male, which he was interested in getting more male teachers. He thought that it was more likely that a young fellow may be able to have a little more control over classroom management. So he gave me an opportunity in the school where I thought I'd only be for a second year of my teaching, because I wanted to be a guidance counselor. And something which for me was like a miracle happened when I was routinely walking through the halls of the school. I happened upon a room with about a dozen children, and the teachers from the reading department who had been gathered together for something I had no idea about at the moment. I glanced in and saw somebody with gray hair and a wooden pointer in front of charts that looked like these, with a group of students who had been selected only because they were nearby at the time. And he had invited the chairperson of the reading department to bring in any children. He didn't care whether they could read or not, if they were easy to work with or not. And he was always ready, and this was Dr. Gitenyo, I didn't know it at the time, to engage with children no matter what people thought of them, whether they considered them special education, or slow learners, or the most brilliant and easiest to work with. For him, it was all the same. And what I came to discover when I watched, as I snuck into the back of the room and stayed there for about a half an hour, that he had a way of engaging with other human beings where they were. And what seemed to me at the time to be a magical capacity to take them from wherever they were to some place they knew was significant for them. And at least from what I observed at first, in a very short period of time. So these were children who didn't know they could read very much, and who, in the time I watched, found themselves, and I'm saying it that way on purpose, because he didn't tell them anything. They discovered that they could do some things that, to them, felt as though it was worth their time. And so he seemed to be engaging with them just for that reason, and not because there was anything else at the end of that road except they could get better at something that perhaps they thought they weren't going to be too good at. And that fascinated me.
And they were able to read something at the end of the half an hour?
Yes, they were able to read words on these charts, and if you look at the bottom row of charts, you'll see, especially if you look to the right a bit, that there are words that are generally considered advanced and...
Oh, yes,
yeah.
I see leopard, fitness, machine, and
look at asthma and conscientious and foreign...
Very
heifer,
difficult words.
Yeah, tongue, and there are some here I'd challenge you with too, if you want.
Later, we'll do that later.
And what he discovered was that if he could design materials and techniques that put them in touch with what they already knew and use that to discover something they didn't think they could do in a very precise way, that if you're interested I can get into some of the details, that people would work with him for no other reason than they really did want to get better at things.
Well, you know, one of the compelling things about your story, Ted, is that you said you were an observer for about a half an hour in a classroom with a man that you had never met before. And that really led to a lifetime of dedication to this technique and to this learning process. And I find that to be truly compelling. So can you now take us on the journey of what do you feel is being done in this school that is making a difference in the lives of these children? I'll ask that first.
Sure. I think the one thing that I consider most important in the work that the teachers here are trying to do is to always look beyond what may be on the surface in terms of how students are behaving or functioning, whether they're right or wrong about something, and to see in them deep, profound intelligence. That, I'd say, is, for me, the core of what is happening here and can be happening much more every day. You've had little ones around you? Children, grandchildren?
Sure.
Okay. They're amazing, aren't they?
They are.
Now, how is it that every single one of them strikes the grown-ups around them as amazing, and then when children start school, at least after a while, not all of them seem to be so amazing in how they learn?
So you think there's something in the system?
I think there's something
dulling the senses and having a negative impact on that, or not enabling the kids to reach their potential.
I would say there's something in the way most of us as grown-ups start to relate to children as somehow incomplete beings who haven't fully developed. And I don't think this is, I wouldn't consider that a criticism. It's what we typically begin to think about, and I certainly did. And quite frankly, there are times when I fall into that still. What Gattegno saw was that we're all complete at every stage of our development, and that for children of the age of 3 or 4 to have taught themselves how to speak proves they have to be extremely smart. So if now I'm responsible for the education of children in elementary school, and I and the other teachers here, when they see the children, say to themselves, I can't deny that every single one of these people who are here is extremely smart. Then when they seem to be struggling and slow and not quite getting something, or not too interested in science, say, there must be something about how I'm working with them that's not quite right. So rather than, I wouldn't say that things that are happening in schools, typically and sometimes here, are dulling necessarily. But we're not usually working really hard, deliberately all the time, to get to that deep intelligence that's there. The inquisitive part that's just part of being a human being.
Well, you know how sometimes adults will say, whether it's a teacher or a parent, this child has a talent for math, not so great in writing, or this child is terrific and is going to be a writer, she's going to be a writer, but not great in math and science. So then you're saying that that is really an untruth.
I would say it's empirically true that the child may not be doing well in math. But I would also say, if that child taught him or herself how to speak, there's a mathematician in there that we haven't yet reached.
So there's something about the teaching techniques and method and motivation that we have not done for that child. And we're not helping that child to reach the full potential in that area. So what you're really saying is that every child can be terrific in every academic area.
If they had all the time in the world for every area. But that there isn't an area of academics that I think a child couldn't be extremely good at.
So is there a special teaching approach that is used in this school, specifically targeted to each individual academic area, that we would not see in schools across the city? We would only see it here.
I think that what you'd see here, more, since I'm not in all the other schools, I can't say for sure what's happening there, but probably more so here, is that the lessons do not typically involve a teacher explaining, giving definitions, telling children about things. What you're much more likely to see here are teachers who pose very carefully crafted challenges that if the children engage in them, they will discover what they need to know. Now, I realize that's a vague statement, and we can have some specifics. We can see some classrooms. We can have some children in here if you'd like.
What about the crafted challenges? I'm looking at that term. Who crafts them?
The teachers.
Do they do that as part of a group decision? Okay, and do they do that under someone's supervision?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a specific way in which to craft those challenges.
And there's some criteria that we use in order to make sure it's a challenge that will really grab the children, hold their interest, and result in the academic knowledge we all want them to have.
Can you put the techniques for crafting the challenges into a bottle and distribute it around the nation so other people can do the same thing?
I don't know how to do that.
So is it difficult to replicate?
I would say it would be difficult for me to replicate.
Okay.
But there may be other people who would know how to do it much better.
Okay. And now you know the focus in our society is on measurements. And some people criticize that there's too much of a focus on it, and others say it's very important so that we can establish some benchmarks for how children, where they are. Is there a measurement here at the school?
When a few of us made a decision to create this school as a charter school, we knew we were entering into contracts, not exactly the right word, but certainly an understanding and an agreement with our authorizer, those who decided to award us the charter, that whatever we did, at the end there would be results on state tests that met or exceeded what the results were in our case in School District 11. And so far, for the years we've been testing, which started in our third year, we started with first grade.
You're now 9 years old.
We are now 9 years old. So from our third year through our 8th year, every year except one, we exceeded District 11 in ELA results. And every year we exceeded District 11, frequently by a large margin, in mathematics.
That's terrific.
So, according to that measure, I'd say we're doing okay. But, in fact, when we are practicing this approach in the way that I know it could be practiced, because we're not there yet, I would expect that every child in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade who takes those state tests would perform fabulously well on it. One thing Dr. Yatenyo was fond of saying about these kinds of tests, and in those days it was more the regular standardized tests, not so much state tests that were a big deal. he would say, if they can swim in the ocean, they can swim in the pond. And what I understood that to mean is that if they can read really well all kinds of things, they'll be able to read well on the test. So that inspired me as well. Now, of course, you know that tests are constructed in such a way that there are kind of traps in them and things you need to be specifically aware of. But I am as sure as I was when we agreed that this would be a charter school rather than, say, a private school, because we thought about that we're accountable for these children doing well on the state test, and certainly better than the children in the larger district. I think that's a fair standard to hold us to, and we're comfortable with that.
Now, can you tell us something about inclusion of the special needs children in the school? And how many, about approximately, what's the percentage?
Okay. I can tell you, but I would be more comfortable inviting someone else in who could tell you for sure.
Okay. Just general, what's just a...
So we have, I would probably now somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe about 30 children who are classified, and of those children, I don't know, maybe 15 or so who are assigned to a sets teacher. Teachers who are in classrooms with the students most of the time. They do pull them out for certain things in small groups. We do have a couple of them who are here and could talk to you, and we have our school psychologist if you want to find more details about that. I'm a little comfortable answering because I'm not certain about some of the details.
Okay, but we know that you have children with special needs in the school, and this is an inclusion program.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there anything else before we go on to maybe talk to anyone else in the school? Anything else I haven't asked you that you want to share with our listeners?
I'd like to say that we're a work in progress, that the teachers we have working in our school are seriously involved in trying to understand how to connect with the intelligence of all their children, that they're prepared to reconsider conclusions they might otherwise be tempted to reach, like these children should be in a slow group and these should be in a faster group. Clearly there's some children who get things more quickly and progress more quickly. We would like the teachers in this school to always know that we're barely scratching the surface of what these children are actually capable of. And if they're willing to seriously ask themselves every day, what can I do better tomorrow? Then I'm satisfied that we've created a place that will get better every day.
If you had a wish that could be fulfilled, if you had a dream, what would that be? For the children in this school, and the whole approach and the technique.
Okay. That's not a hard one to answer. If you bring to me a group of any children who are in this school, I would feel very comfortable that I would know how to engage them in a way they knew was meaningful and led to a lot of learning. If you bring me a group of teachers in this school, I have to say I'm groping my way along. I don't know as well how to serve their learning as adults as I do children. And I wish I knew how to do that much better, because then my answer about replication would have been different. So I'm working hard every day to figure out how to do that better.
We hope to be there when you get some additional insights and observations. We'd love for you to share them with us.
Sure.
And thank you so much for today.
You're welcome.